the Laughter for All podcast. I am Comedian Nazareth, and thank you for joining us for another podcast. Guess what, people? I know it sounds crazy and not much, but we are number 22 in the stand up comedy podcast out of thousands and thousands of podcasts. We are number 22. Praise God for that. And also, thank you so much for watching the Live with Nas show, which tonight will be episode number 330. So we've been with you guys since the pandemic started, and now you are still with us. And today I had the pleasure of doing an interview for KKLA Los Angeles, one of their top shows, and Pastor Dudley Rutherford was a guest host, and I got to spend an hour. And he's a big fan of the show Live with Nash. He was reading stuff that you guys wrote from the Live with Nash show, and also now I'm asked to host one of those shows in Los Angeles during traffic drive time. Speaking of drive time, it took me 2.5 hours to drive 60 miles. So people, if my shirt is red, it wasn't red when I started driving. It turned red right now. But hey, enough about me. I want to talk about my friend. This man is classic. He's a comedian. He's funny. He's a gentleman. He's very soft spoken, but yet very wise. He was the president of the Christian Comedy Association for a couple years. Really helped a lot, and actually, he is very active right now, keeping the CCA going. Ever since he was 6 years old, David Pendleton has had a passion for ventriloquism and performing. Today, he's a seasoned professional and in demand comedian, an expert ventriloquist whose unique brand of humor has won audiences over throughout the world. David's flawless techniques as a ventriloquist sets him apart from just about any other ventriloquist you have ever seen. He will not only amaze you with his ability to make you believe that anything can talk, but his comedy act will also keep you laughing from start to finish. I had this young man at my house, him and his wife and his kids, and we connected very well. So please welcome to the show, Mr. David Pendleton. Hi, David.
Hey, Naz, it's so great to see you.
Thank you so much for taking the time. Where are you now? What part of the world are you in?
So I'm in Indiana, and that's where I live. I'm home now in Fishers, Indiana, which is a suburb of Indianapolis.
What is it called? What?
Fishers. As in like Jesus said, I will make you fishers of men. So Fishers.
Yes. Fishers of Indiana.
Yeah, exactly.
That is awesome. And it's 9:30 p.m. your time.
Yeah. I actually just got back from my community group. I had a small group that I've been meeting with for almost 20 years.
Wow.
A group of friends that we are just doing life together with. And these are incredibly close friends and just wonderful people. So I was with them tonight, but I got home in time to do this, and it's so good to see you, Naz.
How long it took you to drive?
A lot shorter than it took you. It took me about 15 minutes, and I probably went about the same distance as you today.
No, you know what? I don't want to get spiritual right away, but some Christians don't have these kind of groups. Like I have a men's group that I gather with, that I teach, but also I have a group where we gather together. And you've been meeting for 20 years. What kind of things you talk about? Is it with you and your wife or just men?
Yeah, no. It's couples. And
couples.
So after 20 years, what kind of things we talk about? Everything. And, we've done a lot of different kinds of studies. We've done, for example, Henry Cloud. There's a book that he wrote. The very first book, his very first rendition of that, I think, was called "When Your World Makes No Sense." But it is it just fell out of my head. But it has to do with boundaries, and
that was John Townsend did boundaries.
Yeah, John Townsend and Henry Cloud actually worked on a book together. We talked about that sort of stuff, but. Changes That Heal. That's the book. There it is. It's actually one of the most profound books I've ever read in my whole life. Changes That Heal by Henry Cloud. But that's an example of the kind of like heavy stuff. But we've also done some other interesting where we we watch different like short talks together. We've done studies that Andy Stanley has put out through his church, where he'll do a series and we'll watch the series together. The stream, we'll stream it together and then have a discussion about the content. So a lot of different things that we've tried.
Now, how long you been married, David?
I've been married this year for 30 years.
30 years. Now, how open, like when you say we can talk about everything, can you go to that meeting and go, you know what, I'm so mad at my wife. I'm not feeling that I'm getting, the respect, or I'm not getting the love. Is this kind of thing you guys can talk about? Or Christians say, oh, we can only talk about certain thing that we feel. What do you guys talk about?
Oh no, you're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, there are definitely times when we need to process things together. We're angry about something. We're frustrated. And this is a group of people who will love both partners equally, but will let us process through our stuff. I'm trying to think now, since you've asked it that way, if I can give you some specific examples. Of course, there's probably some things that I could say that I would be breaking confidence to do so. So I won't.
Right. No, I won't. I don't want you to break
obviously. But yeah, no, that's, I think, what has held us together as a group. It has contributed to our group really bonding well, because we really place a high value on transparency and vulnerability with one another, being willing to be vulnerable and being willing to even talk through when you are experiencing doubt, even profound doubt in your faith in God, things that we all go through in seasons in our life. So we try to give one another grace in that. I mean, we're not perfect, of course, but there's nobody
is. But it just that the whole issue of transparency sometimes is very difficult for Christians, which you assume should be the most transparent, because they feel they belong to one body. And you see that sometimes at churches. You go to a church and you're having a horrible day, and people say, "How you doing?" And like, "Oh, I'm great," and everything, and that just keeps us. Now, you're a ventriloquist. That means you can make things talk, right?
Yeah.
So can you grab a book or something? What's in front of you?
Well, actually, knowing that I was doing this.
No, I wasn't. Trust me, I wasn't expecting you to do any count. Oh, who's he?
Oh my! Oh, who is that?
Oh, that's Nazareth.
Oh my goodness!
Let me fix your glasses. They're all crooked. You got to get those. Oh, there we go. That's much better.
Oh, thank you, honey. Oh, it's Nazareth. Hi, Nazareth.
How are you, young lady?
Well, I can sit out and take nourishment. I'm hanging in there. Yeah.
I heard the last time I saw you speak at a show that you had a little cold or sneezing, and what?
Well, I had a little cough.
That's right. You said you had a cough and you went to the doctor.
Yes, I did.
And what did he help you?
Doctor gave me a laxative.
Right.
A laxative for cough?
Yeah, well, it did help. Now I'm afraid to cough. Yeah.
So it's not COVID, right? It's just a cough.
Just a cough.
So laxative work with coughs makes you afraid to laugh. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And how long have you known David?
I don't know. Not his whole life, I guess.
All right. So we claim, of course, that I'm actually her nephew, but in all seriousness, I've actually had Aunt Tilly in my act for over 30 years. I'm going to say it was the 1985 when I first added Aunt Tilly to my ventriloquist act. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And no, go ahead. You can stay as long as you want.
Well, thank you, honey.
No, actually, I'm going to put you back.
What?
I'm going to put you back in the case. I just,
Oh, be careful.
I will. I just.
That is amazing.
You're going to ask me to do something.
That is amazing. That is amazing, David, that you're able to, because you make us forget that we're talking to you, that you're the one talking.
Well, that's the idea. That's the idea. that's the highest compliment, I think, for any ventriloquist, is not, oh, gee, I didn't see your lips move, but more, I really just started to believe that Aunt Tilly was real, So
I was talking to a dummy.
yeah, exactly. I'm talking to Aunt Tilly.
Now, do you feel, David, that when you're doing comedy, in a time where comedy right now is very sensitive, very politically correct, you think you can get away a lot more with the dummy speaking than you?
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. It's always been true of ventriloquists, that there's a certain amount of there's certain boundaries that you can cross that you probably can't cross as a comedian or as a monologist, somebody that's just standing on stage with a microphone, because people will accept it's a character, it's not real, it's kind of an exaggeration. It's like a caricature that you're presenting. But I will say, I recently did a program in front of an entirely college-aged audience. This was actually on campus.
Mhm.
And I noticed, because the whole dynamic with ventriloquism is interesting, because the character, you are creating a dichotomy. It's more like a sitcom that you're creating more than a stand-up comedy act. You're doing more of a sitcom. It's dialogue,
Right.
and it's situations, and it's uncomfortable situations that you're kind of creating, just like a sitcom would do. But one of the dynamics is, the character will often say something insulting to the ventriloquist, but that's funny because you recognize that, oh, he just insulted himself through this character. And so you laugh at yourself when you kind of realize, oh yeah, that's a funny concept. That's ironic that this puppet is saying insulting things to the ventriloquist, because we all know that actually it's the ventriloquist that's actually saying this about himself. That's
exactly
that's going on kind of in your head all at the same time. But what was interesting about it is, in front of this college-aged audience, I noticed that there were certain lines like that where the character looks at me and says something insulting, where normally in an audience where there's a broader range of diversity in age, response would be ha 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 ha. It would be laughter. But in this sort of closed in demographic of ages, the response was ooh.
Ooh, yeah. We're hearing more of oohs than laughter from younger audience like that. David, I think you froze a little bit when you went ooh.
Laughter.
Yeah,
it was more I'm not sure that's that's appropriate, that kind of feel. It's like, oh wow.
I hope that's temporary. I hope that doesn't last too long, because it's so annoying when people are oohing and they don't even know. When there's no malice in it, it's fine. It's funny.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, that's your point. It's just like, come on, folks. There's no malice. We're having fun here. But if we are so hypersensitive now that we don't even have a sense of humor about that kind of stuff, you're right. It's disconcerting a little bit.
Right. Now, have you ever, you went to a show and your luggage was lost, you have the dummies in it, and can you do stand-up without anything?
I would say no. I don't have a prepared stand-up act that I feel like I could do with any longevity. But I will tell you a situation where one time I was working actually with our mutual friend, John Branyan.
Yes, funny guy, very funny guy.
So John and I were actually going, and John had never done this before, but I told him that I think it would be really fun if he and I could go do a little community service, if you will. Let's go do some comedy inside of a prison. There's a prison just up the road from where John lives. And so we lined up a program where we went into this prison. Well, I sent them all the preliminary information, including the equipment list and everything. Well, somehow communication lines got crossed, because when we got there and I had the cases with me with the characters, they said to me that you can't take those in. I said, well, I sent you the list of things to be cleared. They said, no, we never got that. So
Uh-oh.
I don't know what happened, but they said, yeah, no, absolutely no exceptions. You cannot take those in because they're not approved. So John and I had to go in to do comedy. Now, I was very grateful that I had John with me, frankly.
Right, right. But
But,
couldn't you just grab someone's neck like you do sometimes and make
well,
him?
yes, I did do that. But the other thing that I did is there was a guy there, an inmate actually, that had a stocking cap on. And it seems a little gross, but I was desperate. I asked him if I could borrow that stocking cap. So, you know what I mean? It's like it's been on his head. Now I'm going to put it on my hand. It just feels a little weird. But I took his stocking cap, put it on my hand. Actually, somebody came up with a rubber band. I asked, can I find a rubber band here? And I put the rubber band around the hat so that I created what was just this talking mouth.
Uh-huh.
And that was it. I didn't even have anything to improvise to use for eyes. So I just had this talking mouth. And so I did a good portion of my material with a hat. John, of course, thought it was hilarious. The inmates were very appreciative because I made the best of the situation. I tried to say to them, look, you know, when life gives you lemons, you know, you got to make lemonade, right? So, so I made the best that I could out of that situation. But
you mentioned it was a community service, like you chose it, but having John Brennan, you sure it was like by you guys?
Yeah, we were actually doing time.
Community service.
Yeah, we're doing mandatory community service. This was handed down by the judge.
Let me ask you this. Every time I met you, every time we talked, we spent time together, when you were the president of the CCA, somehow there were moments where I would have snapped at people. I would have got upset. I would have got. What keeps you calm? Is there something you do? Is there do you say something yourself, or are you by nature? Were your parent, your dad calm? What? How do you stay calm? People sometimes they can't do that.
Well, I think I feel like that you have gotten to know me in a season of life where I've cultivated that more in my life, because I can't say that has always been true of me. And I also can't say that it always is true of me. But, you know, I suppose it's just reminding yourself that, no, God is in control, and I cannot control this situation, and I just have to reflect on that. I don't know. That seems like kind of a lame way to express that, but
no,
certainly living through COVID, you know, I mean, we've all had to, like, I have to get up every day and remind myself that God is on the throne and that he is in control. And I just need to do the next right thing. And sometimes it's just living moment by moment like that.
You're right. And so you're a believer in Christ. When did that happen? How old were you when you felt I need Jesus? Or were you at your parents were believers? Where was little David before he met Christ?
I have a couple pictures here I'm going to just show you.
Okay.
Let's see if I can get that. Hold that up. How's that?
Oh, my Lord. How old were you?
So I think that shot, I was about 8 years old.
Oh, and you were doing ventriloquism.
I think I was about 10 or 11 years old in that. Yeah.
And you doing ventriloquism.
Ventriloquism way back then. And then here's another one. This is just with puppets behind a chair.
And how old were you in that one?
That picture, I think I'm about 5.
Oh, my Lord. So when did you start? I think you were taking your mom's umbilical cord and speaking through it. Hello, Placentia. Hello.
And by the way, somebody asked this question. I noticed that. I can see some of the questions.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody asked, how did you get started doing ventriloquism? Did you take classes? And when I was 6, my grandmother gave me a little Charlie McCarthy dummy, a little Charlie McCarthy doll, has a string in the back of the neck, you know, the slot jaw mouth. Yeah. And a record called Instant Ventriloquism by Jimmy Nelson. And I listened to that record over and over and over as a 6-year-old and just started to pick up the skills. I hardly remember learning, but this is where, looking back, I would say God had a plan. But at the time, it was just something that I felt drawn to do. And that's how I learned how to be a ventriloquist. And by the way, most of the guys in my generation, and that includes guys like Jeff Dunham, we all learned off that same record album. And we all kind of knew each other growing up because there was a ventriloquist convention that started up. I went to, I think, the 4th ever ventriloquist convention when I started, and I was 13 years old. And Jeff was there. He was 15. Jeff's a couple of years older than me. And he's always been incredibly talented. And immediately when I met Jeff Dunham and saw his talent, here I'm a 13-year-old looking up at this 15-year-old, so impressed with the guy. But he was so driven to just pursue excellence in the craft. And but obviously our lives took different directions, but in some ways, I just feel like it doesn't matter if you are, a household name like Jeff Dunham, big famous person. You just need to take the path that God has put you on and be faithful to what He's called you to. So yeah, I just went off on a little tangent.
So the question is like, when did you come to Christ?
Come to Christ. Yeah, that's the question to come back to. Yeah, I was in high school, and there was a group in our high school, kind of like a Young Life type group. It wasn't Young Life, but it was similar. And someone invited me to go to that, and it started to really pique my curiosity. And people talked about actually having a personal relationship with God. People talked about being saved. Like those were not, I went to church with my family, but those were not necessarily things we talked about. Those weren't phrases we used. The church where I went, we didn't talk about, being saved or having a personal relationship with God. And so I was curious about those things. What exactly does that mean? That seems a little foreign to me. I was more accustomed to more of what would be just religion. You just follow certain doctrines, but the idea of knowing God personally was a different concept. So I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine who was also just loosely connected to this youth group that I would go to, and I didn't go to faithfully. I was invited to go, and I went a few times. But this friend of mine, her name was Lily, and it was a gal. We weren't like dating or anything. It was just somebody that I knew in school. Lillian was somebody who talked about those things, and she was somebody that talked about being a follower of Jesus. And so we got into one of those conversations one day, and Lillian just broke it down for me in a way that I could understand it. She explained to me, God loves you. He has a plan for you. There's a problem that we all deal with, and that's this problem of sin, and that Jesus is the remedy for that He died on the cross to pay the penalty for our sins. And that the step that I had not yet taken, even if I knew those things or even believed those things, I needed to take that step to place my faith or my trust in Him. And that when I did that, that's when I would be somebody who was beginning the journey of knowing God personally and having a relationship with Jesus. So that's when I was a sophomore in high school that I made that decision. But then really it was when I went to college a couple of years later that I really started to get serious about my relationship with God. And I got plugged in with a Bible study. I got involved with Campus Crusade for Christ. I remember there was a Gideon on campus, the guys that just pass out free Bibles, handed me a little green New Testament, and I started reading that in earnest for the first time. Read the New Testament in earnest to really understand it. And then I got plugged into a Bible study where I was with a group of other students my age, and we discussed, what the scriptures really mean and what that's all about. So that's my story.
Now, I have two questions, and I'll get back to that. The question is like, How, do you get to share Jesus during your ventriloquist bit? That's asked by Bobby.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, the answer to that is yes. Um, and of course, there are sometimes going to be situations where that's not the time and place to do that from stage. Sometimes,
Uh,
as you well know, Nazareth, you're a believer, and you know that there are going to be times when you are going to that people actually want you to give some sort of a message, where you can tie in the gospel to what you're doing. That's the whole
sure.
purpose. I mean, you like me, you've also done prison outreaches where it's
Yeah.
very intentional that we're going to go in and we're going to do some comedy, but we're also going to tie in a message, and we're specifically going to share the gospel or our story. But sometimes, just like you, that's not the time and place to do that. We weren't hired to do that. We were hired to come and bring the funny. And so
Right.
there's other ways that we are connecting with people off the stage, or just in our lives to share the gospel as best we can. Um, like the old adage, um, always preach the gospel, and if necessary, use words. Right? That's that old.
That's right. Now
Uh, so
you have two boys,
I do.
and they're older now, and praise God, and they're getting married or they're getting
Yeah.
engaged
So big announcement tonight
tonight.
in Florida. My
Uh-huh.
older son Josh asked his girlfriend Maddie, Madeline, or we call her Maddie. He popped the question, asked her to marry him tonight.
And
So he
and
is.
she said what?
She,
What did she?
Josh called shortly after they got engaged, that he popped the question, and it was a FaceTime call, and she held up the ring, and she said, "Well, you're stuck with me now."
That congratulations. That's
Uh,
awesome.
we love Maddie. She's just wonderful, and we're thrilled. So
And
that's
your other son?
older. Now the other son, Jacob, he's actually also engaged, and he's getting married in October. So
Wow.
he got engaged earlier this past year, and so now he and Claire, his fiance, will be getting married in October. So we're going to have two weddings here in fairly short succession from one another.
Congratulations. Now, when your kids were growing up, were teenagers, were they embarrassed that their dad makes his money playing with dummies?
You know what? They never were. As far
They
as I
never
know,
were.
they never were. I think some of it was they got to enjoy the perks, because there were times that I was invited to go and do cruise, uh, programs, and I
Yeah.
would bring them along occasionally. Not always, of course, but when we could, we would actually bring along the whole family, and they got to enjoy the cruise, while dad was working, doing his shows on stage. And so what's not to like about that, right?
That's right.
so,
There
so
was a question. I think it was a silly question, but I'll ask: how can ventriloquism be used in marriage?
well, I can whisper sweet nothings in my wife's ear from across the room.
That's funny. That's funny. You can,
Sometimes she
yeah.
complains, though. Sometimes she complains because she said that I snore on her side of the bed. So,
Have you ever like say something and said, "I didn't say that. That wasn't me." You make someone different voice. I
yeah,
didn't say. I didn't move. Did you see me move my lip, honey? I didn't
exactly,
move my lips.
exactly.
that
Yeah, and as
that
you well know, if you are actually really involved in an argument or a disagreement, that's probably not going to go over very well. So,
how
but we
is
do
your
laugh a lot.
how do you deal with your calmness when shows are not coming or COVID happened or you lost shows? How did you handle that?
Well, you know what? Can I turn this around, Naz?
Turn it around.
Let me ask you, how did you handle
Well,
that? You've probably already answered that quite a few times on this podcast, but I'd like to hear from you. I know you're
I
interviewing me, but I know that you and I are both involved in the same stuff. So
Yes, yes. Yeah, some people think comedians like we have a lot of money and we're like we have savings and it didn't shake. It did. Sometimes as a comedian you live from if you get two gigs canceled, it's gonna affect you.
yes,
I am in shock to this day how the Lord came through
yes,
and covered our expenses.
Yes.
and above and beyond what we needed. And without sure, I did do a lot. I did 2 Zooms or 3 Zooms. I think what happened is I decided that, speaking of me, when I have a ministry to the refugees, and I started it back, co-founded in 2009, and I'm chairman of the board. I give decisions. I meet with the exec. Today is another day. I met with the executive director. We raised funding and all that, but I never get paid anything from it. I don't want to get paid. I told the Lord I never want to get paid from it. So what happened is, because I was off, I would go deliver food to refugee
Yeah, of
families,
course. Yeah.
Afghanis, I mean, and somehow God just took care of us.
Yeah.
My Laughter for All ministry, they decided, the nonprofit that I started 7 years ago, they decided they're going to cover my expenses,
Yeah.
my bills. So I am
Yes.
now I'm back to, I'm booked the next 8 weeks in a row, and back the last months in every weekend. David, it's nothing I did. It's the Lord just
Yes.
provided it. And I used to sit and watch. I go, how come they're busy and I'm not?
Yeah.
But okay, your turn. Back at you.
Yeah, well, my story is almost identical to that, where it's like the oil in the pitcher, right? And
Yeah.
where you just go back to it, and you pour out what you need, and then you come back, and it's just like it's never ending. Somehow the Lord just replenishes that, and it's really hard to explain. It's like I don't know where that has come from. Um, Linda and I actually work under the auspices of a ministry, the Campus Crusade for Christ. So that was a part of my story that I was telling you about, my
Right.
faith
I was.
journey. And I came on staff with Campus Crusade actually right after college. And then what happened was I followed a path where I then began to use what I do as a performer under the auspices of Campus Crusade. And so what that means is, initially when I came on staff, I was a regular Joe campus staff guy. I was on a college campus. I was leading Bible studies. I was just, doing what a typical Campus Crusade for Christ staff would do. But then I was getting calls to do my ventriloquist act. And sometimes it was other campus directors who were calling from other campuses saying, hey, can you come do an outreach on our campus? Because this is a great way to kind of draw a crowd and, get people out to come to a show. And so I would do that. And then my own campus director that I was working under on the campus where I was, which by the way was Kent State University in Ohio.
Oh.
After a while, I got to be like, okay, this is tricky because I have ongoing responsibility here, but I'm actually being called to do some things over here, and now they're in conflict. And so then basically they freed me up. And they said, look, what you do is so unique, and you are basically skilled to be able to do this.
Mm-hmm.
We need to free you up to be able to do that more, where you can travel and be on call.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started doing that. Well, then that just kept growing and expanding. And so that's what's happened for me. But initially I came on staff, was raising support, but then I also would start to do gigs early on where I was getting paid to do those. But that money would actually go into a Campus Crusade fund, out of which I'd get a salary. I don't need to go into all the details, but basically.
Right. But that's hard sometimes, because what if you get paid a lot for a gig, and sometimes we get those big 10 and 20,000, and and you go, wait a minute, I get that?
Yeah. Well, actually, in my case, it was fine because it would go into an account that was earmarked specifically for what I was doing within Crew, and so it's not like that got absorbed by someone else.
Right.
In many ways, it was like forced savings.
Right.
So then I cultivated that ability basically to live on a fixed income. And that's actually one of the problems with guys that do gigs, is that, as you well know, it's feast and famine.
Right.
And so you get the good gigs and you're riding high, but you got to be careful that you are maintaining a certain lifestyle, that doesn't all go away because you're consuming it in such a way that now, you're upside down in your finances.
And that's a harder thing, David, for a lot of entertainers, a lot of self-employed people.
Yes.
Like, you have seasons or months where you make a lot of money, but you had months with famine, and when you're in famine, you're not buying clothes,
Yeah.
you're not going on vacation, you're not going to the movies, you're not eating out. And then when the feasts come, you start doing all that, and then you notice you didn't save any money, and then
Right.
it happens. But
Oh, and you're exactly right. You really have to be. That is a whole discipline in and of itself.
right.
And we just had to learn that early on, that this is how this is going to work. And
Now, Linda is your agent, manager,
okay,
your
so
wife,
that's
Linda.
another part of the story here. So with COVID, Linda, my wonderful, beautiful wife, uh, basically had a job opportunity come down the pike for her,
Oh,
and
good.
to be a technical writer. So she actually works for a company that does training, and they train various professionals how to use different software packages, this kind of thing. But there has to be curriculum that's written, and along with that curriculum, you need to have consistency in the writing. And so Linda would be the proofreader, or has become now the proofreader and the technical writer that contributes to that whole process. So she now has a job
So you,
working in that industry, which has been an incredible blessing as well.
so you
So,
have to book yourself now.
well, exactly. So now it's back to kind of the way in the way old days when it was just me, doing it. But Linda, of course, still helps with that. And she can still come with me because this particular job is a work from home kind of job. So as long as she
Oh,
has internet access, she can work. So
oh,
that can't happen, like blanket across the board, but within reason, she can actually still, be with me on trips and helping out with what I do. So,
what's the worst gig you've done?
oh wow. You know what? I'm sure you're the same way. You kind of put them out of your memory, right? It's like I don't want to remember
No,
that.
some when they hurt, you remember them.
Yeah, that's true. I suppose the ones that are the hardest. I'm trying to think of a specific one. I remember one where, how you send the client a rider, and we've actually gotten to where we send them a rider and we show them a setup, and we say, okay, here's how you should set the chairs up. If it's a corporate event, if there's a dance floor, you don't want to have people sitting around the dance floor with this big whole
Right.
gap, between you and the audience. So we'll actually show them that picture, but then we'll put an X in it, like, do not do that, And I showed up, and it was as if they read the writer such that X was what you're supposed to do.
Oh no.
So, those, it's just like, you're there on behalf of the company to provide entertainment. The people that are coming to see your show, they're not there to see you. They see you as just as a total interruption to their evening.
Yes, they
So
want to dance.
yeah, and you have to work really, really hard. So those are the most difficult ones that come to my mind, that it's just like, oh my goodness, I just need to hit my mark, say my lines, and get off the stage as fast as I can.
Uh,
I suppose there was another situation where it was an outdoor event. And once again, it has everything to do with environment. They had set up this platform, and I was performing on the stage, and behind me was this busy road where trucks were pulling up, air brakes, hitting their air brakes and all that stuff. All that's going on behind me. And when they set up the stage, they never really thought about the time of day. And so that was the time of day when the sun was setting right back here. And
ouch.
so everybody that's watching the show is like doing this.
They can't see you.
They can't even see you. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So it's mostly those. Would you agree? It's mostly just the environment that just kills you when you're trying to put on a good show.
I add couple grand when it's outdoors because
Yeah.
your voice is gonna be gone.
Yeah.
They're gonna be the ambience. You gotta fighting against the environment. Uh, what kind of father were you? Were you this calm? Were you disciplinary? You had two boys
I
close
wish
to
I
you.
could say I was always just this calm, idyllic, I just handled my sons with such finesse and grace. But I can definitely remember times when I would totally lose my temper, and, you know, just fly off the handle. And, you always are just so embarrassed, when you kind of come to your senses and you realize, oh, I was way too hard on him. I was never somebody, of course, that would lift a hand or, do anything, thankfully, by God's grace, like that physically. But how you can say some harsh words.
Right.
And so, there are always things that you regret. But thankfully, I think that even there, that God gave me the grace. And that's also why, we have our wives, right? Who
right.
kind of step in and say, wait, David, I think maybe you need to go take a break right now,
Yeah, I'm the other way around. I'm the one because I'm the calm guy. Not the calm guy. I am the guy that felt guilty because I was gone, on gigs. So when I came home, I could not be upset at the kids.
Yeah,
and that created a challenge with Maha because she wants to, she wants me to be the disciplinary.
yes.
And I don't want I'm not the disciplinary type of guy, so it was
Yeah.
hard that way. So how you guys handling the empty nest now?
You know what? We're actually really loving it, but some of that is
I'm loving it. Okay.
well, we are actually, but here's my qualification. Our two sons live relatively close to us, so both Josh and Jacob still live local to the Indianapolis area. They've both bought homes. Josh bought a condo. Jacob bought a house. And actually, both of them have had roommates that have helped them to make their mortgage payments and all of that. So they've been very wise in how they've, kind of left the nest and made wise investments in their future. And so, but the fact that they live close, like Linda and I are very intentional about inviting them over often. We play games together. So now it's the six of us, Josh and Maddie, Jacob.
Yeah.
And so our family of four has now grown to a family of six. And it literally is officially that now, with Maddie being engaged to Josh as of tonight. And this is a really, really great season in our lives right now. Like I'm very grateful to be able to say that. And I mean that in all sincerity. Like, I know for some people it's hard and they go through, difficulty relationally with their kids and so on. But right now, for us, by God's grace, purely by God's grace, we are just experiencing a really wonderful season.
There's a question by Timothy. It says, how do you deal with hecklers in the crowd?
Ventriloquists don't often get hecklers as much as stand-up comedians do, because I think people are a little bit intimidated that this puppet is going to make me look like a fool.
That's right. I'm heckling a puppet.
I'm heckling a puppet here. And it's actually, that makes it pretty easy because when that starts to happen, the puppet can say, you're talking to a piece of wood, right? Like, this is a little dose of reality here. So for the most part, I haven't had much issue with heckling. The other thing that I also do a lot that stand-up comedians don't really do very much at all is I involve people in my show. I actually get people on stage. There's a bit that I do in my show where I have a character, the very classic looking, wooden boy character with the slot jaw mouth. It's a classic ventriloquist puppet. I'll get a kid on stage and Mac, that's the character, will say to this kid, I can read your mind. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a paper bag on my head, and then you're going to pick an object out of the audience, and I'm going to tell you what that object is without.
Of course.
And so the gag is, Mac has turned his head around, and so the kid is holding up the object. Okay, here's the object, and then Mac turns his head around, and there's a hole in the bag, and he's looking at it. But I'm looking the other way, like I'm saying, well, this is really amazing how he's going to be able to do this. And of course, the kid is looking at Mac, and then he'll do things like he'll hide the object behind his back,
not knowing it's a dummy.
Yeah, exactly. So then Mac will, of course, accurately identify the object, and of course the audience will applaud. And I'll say, well, wasn't that amazing? And the kid is like, no. Well, What are you talking about? I know how this was done. What are you talking about? There's a hole in the bag. So
That's
this is my favorite bit. So in other words, all of that is to say, unlike a lot of comedians, I enjoy getting people on stage. And of course I do the bit where, you use the live person as the dummy, that whole deal. So I'm already involving the audience in my show more than a stand-up comedian might.
right. Now, was there anything, do you sometimes talk to God and say, Lord, I really want it to be at this level, at this stage? Have this ever hit your mind? I mean, we are spiritual. I know where you stand with the Lord. Let's just be real.
Yeah.
You have, me too.
Oh, sure. Yeah, of course. Of course. And yeah, you just realize that on some level, we're all just insecure, needy people. And then I just have to reflect on, okay, what do I really think that's going to get me?
I see.
Why do I really want that? And of course, I think ultimately we want that because we want to be known and we want to feel significant. We want to feel like that we're making a difference in the world and that we are contributing in a significant way in life to the world. And so somehow being famous, that will make me feel that way. It'll make me feel like everybody knows me. Then that means that I'm loved and cherished or whatever. But most really, really famous people, or not most, but many famous people, their lives are just a hot mess.
Right, but don't you think, David, it has something to do with your capability? You're as good as you're as good as the other guy that's famous.
Yeah, except I'm not sure that that's entirely true. I mean, at least in my case, people will say that to me. They're like, "Oh my goodness, you're as good as whatever, Jeff Dunham or something." And I think, well, okay, that's kind of you to say, but that's all. Even that's pretty relative. And in some ways, I know myself. I'm my own worst critic. What I admire about guys like Dunham or even you, quite frankly, is your ability to just be prolific with your material. Just keep writing and to keep producing. I admire that so much. I don't feel like I'm good at that at all. It's a lot of work for me. And I feel very insecure about introducing new material into my show. In that way, I'm a little bit OCD. Like when I put something on stage, I want it to be like polished, like like I've been doing it for 25 years. But that's impossible. You can't do that. The only way for something to be polished, like you've been doing it for 25 years, is for you to actually have been doing it for 25 years. But it's intimidating to try to introduce new stuff and to expect it to be as polished and even as good as the standards, that you're used to. So I'm just very aware that I don't feel like I'm a very prolific writer and producer of new content. And I'll joke around with somebody. I'll say, well, I'll, sure, if you want me to come back to your thing next year, I'll have a whole new hour of material. It won't be funny or entertaining, but it'll be new.
But to me, you know what? Let me not change your mind, but let me tell you what keeps me writing new material and trying it. Number one, it's one thing to write because during COVID, I wrote a lot of stuff, but I didn't get to perform it. But what is your best bit? What is your best bit, David, in your whole act? What's the best bit that you do?
Well, the one that I just described is certainly my favorite bit. It's pretty ironclad. It works, almost all the time, and it's a little bit different each time because it's a different kid, and there's always a little bit of intrigue. What's going to happen next because you've got a kid on stage with you. So I would say that Aunt Tilly, that whole Aunt Tilly routine that I do. That's also interactive. Aunt Tilly gets an audience member on stage. she sings to that person, and we do some jokes and some callbacks, relative to the jokes that I've done before I've gotten them up there.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, that's how I'd answer that.
Okay. So the whole thing for me is, well, remember the first time you did the Antilly?
Yeah,
Remember the first time you did that bit? Uh, that was new. If you did not try that,
right.
this wouldn't be a new bit. So when I'm writing every day, all right, I go, that could be the next huge bit. Now my best bit is the snoring. I cannot close. I have to close with that. It's huge. But at one point, it was a new bit, and I had to try it.
Right.
If I didn't try it, I wouldn't be doing it right now.
Yeah, no, that's
But
a
you're a perfectionist. You're a perfectionist.
well, I am, and
And that's good. That's very good. I wish I can be like that, where I have to do my best, like get the bit so perfected to be able to do it on stage. But what do you say to people who's like they're saying, "Oh, I'm still waiting for God to do something. I've been waiting forever. I've been praying forever." You've been through valleys and through mountains with the Lord. What do you tell those people in the valleys right now?
uh, I suppose the thing that seems most practical to me is to make sure that you are engaged, and I suppose too, because I can relate to this the most. Make
Mm,
sure that you are not forsaking relationships with other people. Make sure that you are staying in contact and pursuing friendships, and uh, and cultivating the skill of pursuing intimacy, which basically means being willing to be vulnerable. That's how you pursue intimacy, is by being vulnerable with people. Um, and this was something that I learned early on in my life. I tell this story a lot, but I went through a time where I was in kind of a deep valley in my life, and I
mm,
started going to counseling. And the counselor asked me two questions that absolutely changed my life. The first question was, "Who are you intimate with?" And of course, intimate, that word, don't read into that. That, like, we're not talking like sexual intimacy.
sexual, yeah.
We're talking about intimacy, like deeply bonded, close friendship kind of relationship. Who do you have that kind of an intimate relationship with? And as I reflected on that, I really discovered that I had that in my life, but I didn't have it in my life at that time.
Mm,
I had allowed myself to kind of forsake even pursuing that. I never thought that that was something that I even needed to pursue. I just was kind of going on with life, but was neglecting doing that. And then the second most profound question that this person asked me, or this counselor asked me, was, "Do you know how to ask for intimacy?" Which I thought was a
mm.
really interesting question. And I remembered that I saw, I can't talk to, I sat and thought about that for quite a while. And then I looked at the counselor and I said, "No." And then
How do you? How
I
do
said,
you?
"Do you?" Yeah, that's literally what I said. "Do you know how to ask for intimacy?" Because as I thought about it, I thought, how do you do that without being the type of person that is just incredibly needy? You don't want to be that guy. You don't
Mm,
want to be like, "Oh, would you be my friend?" This desperate kind of thing. That was kind of how I was perceiving what it meant to ask for intimacy. And actually, the counselor said, "David, you know how to do this." He said, "I think you're overthinking it, but I'm confident that you know how to do this." That it's basically being intentional about, with the people that are in your life, the people that you know, being intentional about being vulnerable with them, and being willing to kind of sit with one another, in your pain,
mm.
your need.
So you mean being open, just meeting? But isn't that you can get hurt with opening up
Yeah,
to the wrong
yeah, you
people?
sure can. You sure can. So you have to be careful about that. You have to be
Can
selective.
emphasize intentional. How do you become? I still don't get the intentional about being intimate, finding people to be intimate with.
Well, um, it, some of it is just, are you willing to pick up the phone and call this person that you know and just say, "Hey, how you doing? I just want to check in with you." That's intentionality. Um, it's and for guys, it can be really intimidating because it feels weird
Hmm.
because we're used to getting business done. So hey, David, what's going on? Why are you calling? Well, I'm
Yeah.
calling to check in. I'm just calling to say hey and see how you're doing. Oh, well, all right. Yeah, I'm good. Is there a problem? Is 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 there is there something I can solve for you? Is there something you need? Do you need money? Do like
Yeah.
we kind of will do that, and so then it's a matter of telling this friend that you're reaching out to, no, it's actually none of that. I just need a friend. you know,
Wow. Wow.
I just need somebody to be my friend. And I need somebody to just process some things with in life. And, here's what I'm thinking about right now, or this is where I'm struggling right now, whatever it might be. Most people really actually are very responsive to that. You would be, right? If somebody
Yeah, I
called.
would. I would. I love that with people. But then again, I'm the type like it's very few people because of the number of people that because I love people
Yeah.
and there's a lot of people around me
Yes.
and I try to be with everyone, give them their time and I found that I can't do that because of the ministry and all that. So
Yeah.
I'm trying even with just my own family to really take each one individually to spend
Yes.
time with them and just be intimate with them on a different level other than do you need any money, how can I help you, what do you
Yeah.
want, you do that. So that's the difficult part and I feel I'm shortchanging a lot of great people that I can be intimate with in a friendship level and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, and then the other side of it is, it's a dance. It's a little, there is a balance because you don't want to be that guy too that's like an emotional sponge, where you're
Yeah.
just, so needy that, or even just, like we see at parties, the tactless bore who just and okay, what is that? Who are those people? What makes them that? And I think it's mostly people who just talk about themselves.
Right.
They're always interested in just telling you about themselves
And
and a
their
lot
problems,
of
yeah.
their problems. Yes. So you have to reciprocate, or there has to be a reciprocal kind of relationship where you're also balancing that with, okay, look, I've shared a lot about me. You've been very patient and kind to listen to me, but now tell me what's going on in your life, or where it's it's now a real conversation where you're not just dominating that.
You're right about this, David, because sometimes I feel this is my technique. I don't call it technique, that's natural to me. I listen to people for at least half an hour when I meet them. And
Yeah,
I think that gives me later the right to share what I'm feeling.
of course.
And they'll be a lot more
Yeah,
receiving and listening and compassionate because they feel, well, I listen to them. And that's really would work with people who feel I don't have any friends. I don't have anyone to talk to. Well, do you have anyone to listen to? Because that's what would turn to become your friend. What is David working on right now? I can't believe it's been an hour we've been
oh my gosh.
together.
Wow, that's
I'm enjoying
and by the way,
listening to
I
you.
want to say, because I can see some of the I'm only glancing at what people are writing in the chat. So I just want to give a shout out to my friend Michelle Van Duzen.
Oh,
Uh,
she is amazing.
Michelle, you are such a sweetheart, and it has been a very, very long time since we've talked or interacted. And I just want to say, it's nice to hear from you. It's so fun that you're here and that you're sitting in on this this conversation with Naz and I. And thank you for your very kind comment earlier. She said, you're a great entertainer. And see, that's
You
the other.
are. You're so sweet.
It's very kind. But that's one of the things I appreciate about Michelle is that she's just always full of enthusiasm and encouragement. And that's the other thing, too, that I admire in other people. And I want to try to emulate as best I can. So,
Michelle, occasionally when we do a show every night, but it's 11:30 your time. If you stay up late, you can just laugh with us for an hour every night, 11:30 Eastern time. It's called Live with Naz on Comedian
yeah,
Nazareth.
yeah.
And you know what do you call it? Michelle kicks in and she throws some funny answers. We ask questions, stupid questions or regular questions, and people answer. And she's really funny. Now, tell me, what are you working on? What are you doing right now?
What are you working on? Okay, that was the question. Believe it or not, I've actually been thinking about and pondering opening a venue in my community. I've actually bought a domain. I live in Fishers, Indiana, and I've bought the domain, which is nothing, right? It's like $50, so what?
Yeah.
Investment. FishersComedyandMagic.com.
Oh.
So my dream is to have something like Hermosa Beach, Comedy and Magic.
Magic Club, yeah.
The Hermosa Beach Comedy and Magic Club. Mine would be, obviously, as a believer, it would be very important for me to make sure that I carefully vet, what is on the stage, if that's going to be a venue that I am, that I have ownership in. But it would not just be a place for me. Like, I'm sure I would be on stage and I would probably host things and welcome people and so on. But I realized during COVID that what I really want to be and what I really am passionate about is bringing people together in community. That's why I'm so passionate about the Christian Comedy Association. I love the idea that we can bring people together in community. I don't feel like I need to be like the mouthpiece of that, or even, the person on stage, if you will. I just love to be, even in the background, seeing people connect as a community, seeing people come together. Because that's just made such a difference in my own life. And I think it's exciting to see it happen in other people's lives. So I'm passionate about that. So I don't know. I don't have the kind of capital to just go out and, build a building and start a venue, let alone the business acumen to make that happen. But I've been praying that the Lord would kind of lead me to the next step, into the next relationship, into the next person that might participate, or perhaps investor. So I'm doing an outreach actually for my church coming up here on September the 11th. And it's an evening of comedy and magic. And it's myself and a buddy of mine, John Mobley, who's a very talented, very funny magician, who's also local to Indianapolis. So he and I are going to do this comedy show. It's an outreach for the church. And we are advertising it on FishersComedyandMagic.com. So if you went to that domain right now, FishersComedyandMagic.com, you'd see that one show that we are promoting. But eventually this could grow into something where it's not only just shows that perhaps would even float around, in different venues, but ultimately that it would have its own place where it would live and its own venue. So
how far are you from an airport?
We personally, like in Fishers, we are about a 35 to 40-minute drive to the other side of the city to get to the airport.
That's not bad. So the comedians can fly. How much money do you need to start this thing? If you need a building, and you can rent a building or a restaurant.
And here's the thing. I mean, I've been dreaming about this, but I have not written an actual business plan yet. So I don't know. I could only guess. And I suppose it all depends on what kind of a venue, are you going to own it? Are you going to rent it? Like you say, I don't know.
I used to have a comedy club in Southern California, but I never had to own it. There's a church that had a building that was empty.
Nice.
We literally turned it into a comedy club with waitresses and a kitchen that was next door. They turned it into a kitchen and tables and three comedians.
I already lived my dream, Naz. So
no, what I'm saying is, if that thing can, Okay, you know what? It was great because we were charging $10 a ticket, plus people were buying food instead of drinks.
Yes.
And I had three comedians that the headliner was actually in town for something else, so I was
Yep.
able to give him just $1,000 or not more.
Yeah.
But uh, if I continued, and then what happens? The church one pastor that worked at the church decided he wants to be a comedian, and he wanted to take it over and do that. So the whole thing's, and then one of the pastors that helped with it left the church. So it's tough. But if I continued somewhere else, but I didn't have the time because I'm traveling as a comedian, this could have easily turned into having a partnership with a restaurant that
Yes.
needs people and say,
Yes.
hey, you give me this side of your room, I'll do the comedy, you guys get the food, and then eventually you buying the building.
Yeah.
So it
Exactly.
doesn't have to be right away, but I can see that. And can you book me for week 2?
Nazareth, you can be absolutely sure that if this thing gets off the ground, that you are on my short list of comics that we want to bring out for
And
this.
I know we have 1,800 downloads for each of our episodes. So I want to say, if you're an investor or looking for an investing opportunity and you want to talk to David more about it, or even you want to hire David, David is very, very professional. If you're a corporate, if you have a hotel, if you have a church, I mean, David is very amazing. People will leave standing ovation. I've seen him many times. Just very funny man. So, how can people get a hold of you, David?
Well, my website is anythingcantalk.com. So they can email me, of course, at David at anythingcantalk.com. If you just Google my name, David Pendleton, and particularly David Pendleton ventriloquist, then you're going to probably see my website. That'll be at the top. If it's there are some agents that have me listed. So if it's an agent, yeah, I mean, you can go to them, but
No, call directly. Go to David. You know
yeah.
what? If you need to get a hold of him, you can contact me too. I will get you in touch with him. David, thank you so much. Here we go. Michelle, put your website up there.
Oh, thank you.
Anythingcantalk.com.
Yeah, thanks. That's awesome. And
D-
what was I going to say? Oh, I forget now.
we're talking about booking you or people having you come to their event.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the best way to get a hold of me for sure.
All right.
Anytalk.com.
Thank you so much, David, for taking the time. Congratulations on your son's
Thank you.
engagement.
Thank
Send my
you.
love to Linda and
This
your
was
other
fun.
son.
Boy, I can't believe the hour went that fast.
Hey, we
More than an
we'll
hour.
we'll do it again. Love you, man.
Yeah,
Thank you
love
so
you.
so much. All
Thank you.
right, take care, David. Thank you. And guys, thank you so much for watching. I want to encourage you to in the next hour or so at 8:30, in about an hour, to join us for the live with Naz. It's funny, today I was on a live broadcast on KKLA, biggest station, Christian station in Los Angeles, and actually the pastor Dudley Rutherford, who's also a pastor of a huge church in Los Angeles. He's an avid fan. He was reading some of your guys' comments. He's watches the show a lot, and also we announced the show on the air. So today we might get a lot more people watching. And if you don't subscribe to this podcast, please do. It will help when you subscribe. I know you watch it. I know you do that. But would you subscribe to this podcast? You go to your phone, you go to podcast, just subscribe to it, add it to you. Love you guys. Thank you so much for watching this show. And I will see you at the Life with Naz and Comedian Nazareth. And have a great night. Thank you so much. Good night. Okay.